Today is World Oceans Day, so happy World Oceans Day, everyone. And we'll be talking a bit of today about what can impact waterways and lakes and oceans everywhere, not just in Cobourg. So I'm the environmental technician for the town of Cobourg. I'm also the source water protection risk management official for the town of Cobourg and the Ganaraska Conservation Authority. And I am also a wastewater operator for the town of Cobourg. So I look at the clean side of things and I look at the dirty side of things at the sewage treatment plant. They all kind of intermingle in the whole scheme of things. So I monitor the storm sewers and where the storm sewers discharge to the creeks. And I also monitor the sanitary sewers that go to the sewage treatment plant and that, end up discharging after treatment to Lake Ontario and Cobourg Creek. So as I said, I monitor the creeks and the storm sewers in town for source water protection. And I monitor the sanitary sewers to make sure that the sewage is being treated properly and effectively before it's discharged to Cobourg Creek and Lake Ontario. So, which is our source of drinking water. So source water protection started 20 years ago with the Clean Water Act and the Walkerton tragedy. So Walkerton, they collect their water from groundwater, from like groundwater wells. And what happened was that there's a large storm similar to yesterday, heavy rains, and manure washed into one of the wells and contaminated the water with E. coli. So 5 people did die from that and 2,500 people were ill. So after that, there was an inquiry and things were set in place to prevent that from ever happening again. And that was the Clean Water Act and source water protection. So if you're looking at this picture here, it is the red circle is 1 kilometer around the water intake. The yellow circle is the water intake itself. So if you drove down Darcy Street, drove out into the lake 800 feet, you would come and hit the intake valve that we collect the water. It's in the lake. It's I'm not sure the depth that it's at, but it's 800 feet from shore. So that blue circle is if there was a spill anywhere in that aqua colored area, it could travel to our water intake within 2 hours. So we have to be very conscious of that area on shore. The little V section of the red circle, I'm thinking back to being at Brook Creek today, of the red circle is actually on land there down at Lake Shore and at the end of Darcy and along a bit of Abbott Street. So if anybody lives down there, you're in an intake protection zone 1. Anywhere else in Cobourg is an intake protection zone 2. So if something spills in that intake protection zone 1, we have to be very active and get on it right away because we don't want anything getting out to the water intake. Interestingly enough, we did have just near the Donegan Park sign there that you're entering an intake protection zone. We did have a sewage pipe break underground, and it actually percolated sewage to the surface, and it went down Darcy Street, and we caught it before it got out to the lake, but we had to excavate that pipe, repair it, and fill it back in, and that was done between 11 a.m. and 7 p.m. in one day, just because of the location of it could impact the water plant. We did notify the water plant that they may want to close their water intake, just as a precaution. So that's kind of some of the stuff that I do. So spill response, that sewage spill, ensuring that the water plant is protected, our drinking source is protected. So it kind of all comes together. Could you bring up the next slide there, Jonathan? Sorry. So that's the signs you'll see down in the intake protection zone 1 that protect the water plant. Let like first responders like fire or police or public works department or spill response crews know that they need to act quickly. They need to protect the storm sewer because it is going directly out into the intake protection zone area that the water goes to the plant, so to the water plant. So as I said, I also work on the dirty side of things at the sewage plant. The sewage plant was commissioned in 1947, so it's a few years old, I'd say. So back in the 40s and 50s, there was not a lot of automation. The operators would walk around the plant, they check valves, it was a lot of physical checking, viewing, looking. Nowadays, we have installed something called a SCADA system, which is a data acquisition system, and it monitors everything in real time, and it can collect data, and it lets the operators know ahead of time if there's an issue. So if there's an issue, they're going to get onto that problem faster and prevent a malfunction of any of our treatment systems. So it's just made things more almost proactive, that we're seeing things that we may not see for hours. And it does have the option to collect data, flow rates, you know, volumes treated, that kind of thing. So it's really helpful to the operators. And it's also helpful to me because I know that the sewage is being, you know, treated effectively and efficiently. So when we do discharge it to the creek at our West End plant or the lake at our East End plant, that it's acceptable, it's safe. So we do, I think there's a picture there of it discharging to Cobourg Creek, just off of King Street West. Yeah. And that discharge is regulated by the Ministry of the Environment. We have something called an environmental compliance approval, and it sets strict limits on different parameters and on flow and volume. So we want to make sure that we treat that because, as we know, Cobourg Creek goes to Lake Ontario, which is, again, our drinking water source. So the other aspect of that is that in data-wise, we have a GIS system, it's called, and it has the location of every infrastructure that's under the pavement, whether it's a sanitary sewer or a storm sewer or a maintenance access point. So if I'm out at a spill and I have to know, you know, where is the spill coming from? If I'm, say, in Midtown Creek down at near the Frink there, the park and the rink, where is that coming from? So I can pull it up on my iPad in my truck and go, okay, well, this area is, you know, is collected from this pipe and this pipe, and I can find it faster and stop it and mitigate it faster. So, and same goes with the sanitary sewer. If I have something coming into the treatment plant, I can find out where it's coming from. So again, data acquisition, real-time data. The GIS system is updated frequently. So if I also need to know where I can access to see those maintenance access points are all pinned on our GIS system, which was handy yesterday during the storm. And I knew exactly where the spill was going to. And we could get to it before it left the stormwater pond that was affected yesterday during the storm. So yes, every dot on there is a sanitary, actually is a storm maintenance access point. And that's where you can access and check the storm sewer, similar for the sanitary sewer. So I think the previous slide was another thing that is of a concern, is the E. coli levels in the lake, not only for drinking water, but also for swimming, recreational activities, boating, kayaking. So I monitor Victoria Beach and the harbor in the summer months, just to let the public know what the levels are, and whether they, you know, there should be swimming or should be kayaking. So that's, and we have a sign at harbor and a sign at Victoria Beach just to inform the public of what's going on. And we do collect that. We've collected that data in the harbor, near shore, 50 feet offshore and 100 feet offshore. And we're seeing the E. coli levels drop as you go further out from shore. There's temperature that affects that and waterfowl population, but it's helping town council decide if should we be putting a dock further out so that if there's the kayaking activities going on, they could access and get into their kayaks further out, and reduce the risk of any contact with the, you know, higher levels of E. coli in the close shore waters. So it all really comes together to like data collection, data acquisition, and sharing that data with as many people as possible, to give them the knowledge of what could be in the environment. So the other stuff that I deal with in regards to drinking water, or our drinking water source, is sampling the creeks. So I do sample the creeks. We have three main creeks in Cobourg. There's Cobourg Creek, Midtown Creek, and Brook Creek. There's also Massey Creek at the east end of town that we share with Hamilton Township. So I go out and I monitor the creeks 4 times a year to ensure that anything from our storm sewers that are discharging to the creeks is not impacting Lake Ontario. And I also, any spills, I also collect samples just to before and after to ensure that we've cleaned it up properly, that there's still no adverse effects. And I'll be down at the creek in a short while and show you how to do the sampling and things to look for. The other thing about the creek sampling is the debris issue that we've seen over the last few years. It seems to be getting worse. And so we have joined up with Pollution Probe and got some litter traps that go in the storm sewer catch basins. So you see them in the curb with the grates on top. That's a storm sewer catch basin. And we did that all of last year. And I went through the debris that we collected and candy wrappers, water bottle caps, cigarette butts, tin foil, and all of this, anything that hits the ground, the sidewalk, the curb, on the grass, it will eventually, especially after a rain event like yesterday, it will eventually end up in the storm sewer catch basins, in the creeks, and eventually in Lake Ontario and in our marina and possibly in our harbor. So, and it is important to get that debris out as just solid material, but it's also what is coming off of that debris when it starts to degrade, and that's contaminants. There's different contaminants that come off of that when it starts to break down, and that is ending up in our drinking water system, like our Lake Ontario. So the other thing that we've installed in the marina is it's called a sea bin, and it collects the debris that gets in there that isn't caught by the litter traps, and it removes the debris that's on the surface. So the takeaway here is just always be thinking about anything that's dropped to the ground. It's going to end up in Lake Ontario eventually if somebody doesn't pick it up and put it in the garbage. And this had just happened a month ago, and we had a big rain event, and all of this debris came out of the storm sewer because it's fallen into the catch basins. It sat in there, and then it's a heavy rain and it all gets flushed out. So that's why we have what's called a sea boom in there to try to keep it in the corner, and then we skim it out. So, but this is all making it out into Lake Ontario, and that is the water that we drink after it's treated. But some parameters can't fully be removed. So it's something to just always be thinking about when you're out and about. So we teamed up with the University of Toronto trash team, and we are shipping all of the material we collect this year to them for them to go through it and get statistics on what is mostly being caught by these litter traps. And then once they have those statistics, they can look at, say, how can we reduce the amount of this stuff getting into the storm sewer systems and the marinas and the lake. And then they can take that information and give it to the public and help the municipalities with, say, putting out more cigarette butt holder things and more trash cans. And so basically taking all the data that they've collected from going through the debris and coming up with solutions on how to deal with that and how to pass that information on to the public. Yeah, that's a really good picture there. Research-based, getting the information together and out to the public, and going from there with that, and hopefully making a better change in how much stuff is ending up in the lake.
One connection that I make out of that presentation is not litter, right? Even a bubble path, it's gonna make it to the lake at some point, especially after the rains we've had today. So you've got a place there to list at least 2 meaningful connections in your life, in your community, or in the environment. Okay? Take care of your trash, put it where it should go, so it doesn't end up in that trash bin that goes into your drinking water. Well, another connection might be, where does your water come from? Right now in the school. And your taps when you open it up. Are you drinking town water? Are you drinking well water? We're gonna have another presentation shortly. They'll be a little more suitable for well water. But anyone on town water right now, everything that Jen's talking about is your drinking water. Okay.
Okay, Jen. Yeah, no, that's great. So this is your last slide, Jen, and
Yeah.
this is another example of the town of Cobourg working with science and community research.
Yeah, so as I said, it is important that, you know, getting that solid material out as well. But when that solid material starts breaking down into little bits of plastic, it's causing another impact where the fish will eat that, not realizing it's not food. And so they may die. If they don't die, and, you know, if you're out in Lake Ontario, we've got charter people going out and fishing. They bring that in and then we eat it. So it's a food chain thing. It's, you know, it's right through the ecosystem that is impacting not just our drinking water, but the whole chain in the ecosystem, from fish to bird to humans and then on and on. So it's something to not only think about when don't litter, but, you know, make sure that it is getting in that garbage can and that it's not going to end up in the lake and break down into these small particles. The other thing is we do have 3 plastic extrusion companies in town. If you know that plastic lattice that you can put up on your deck or whatever, that is made up of these small little plastic pellets called nurdles. And that's usually delivered on a rail car. And sometimes when they're hooking and unhooking the hose to fill up the inside storage tanks, it leaks to the ground, and that gets into a storm sewer. And we did have a problem a few years back where that was getting into the storm sewer, and it was affecting Brook Creek because the industrial park off Darcy Street at the storm sewers all discharged to Brook Creek. So we worked with the industries and they put in fine screen litter traps in the catch basins in the industrial park. And we have not seen the issue we had a few years ago with pellets. Every time it would rain, they would wash up on the shores of the creek, and, you know, ducks would eat them. And it's just so not good for them, not good for the environment. So we worked with the industries and they came up with that solution. So we've kept that bit of plastic out of the creek and out of Lake Ontario. So a win-win.
That's great.
Yeah.
Are there any questions to Jenn Leno, environmental technician for the town of Cobourg, who does amazing work? And as she mentioned, has to constantly respond to spills to protect our the source drinking water for the town of Cobourg. And you'll learn more about how to protect it through the next topic that I'll be talking to, which is citizen science and community research. So Jen, thanks, and we'll see you out at Brook Creek shortly.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Take care.